The most important meal of the day, second breakfast.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another Second Breakfast podcast. I'm Andy Roth, alongside Phil Duvall and our special guest for the day, Ken Quinney. And it's Wednesday. And, well, guys, say hi. Say hi.
Oh, jeez, I was going to say.
How you doing?
Hey, Andy.
Hey, what?
I mean, okay. No big deal. You're a really good host, and I like what you do, okay?
Wow.
But normally we go, I'm Andy, say hi, Phil, and then we announce the person. You just threw my name in with Ken like I'm just a guest as well. Andy, Phil and Ken. Phil showed up again on my show. That's
Phil,
how it felt.
Phil,
Andy, have you officially taken over this podcast? Are you nudging? Is this a people out?
You're here for the moment, Ken. This is the coup d'etat. Here's the deal. Phil, I see you all the time.
I know it's true. It's
just
much more
all the
exciting.
time. You know?
There's a great little thing that I'm pretty sure is an inside joke for Bob Dylan and maybe two other people, but Bob Dylan has had the same bassist since 1991, I think.
Okay.
And most of the other people in his band have gone on and done different things and gone back and forth, but he's kept this bassist. And he's notoriously not very easy to work with, but he's had this bassist since 1991. Well, for a longest time, he introduced his band every night, and he'd introduce all these people, and when he'd get to the bassist, and he'd go, and playing on the bass guitar tonight is Tony Garnier. But he'd always say playing tonight as if, like, maybe tomorrow night it'll be someone else.
Right.
It's like, I mean, he's been with you forever. He's clearly not going anywhere. He's your band leader, but that's fine. That's
Nice.
what it felt like. So I feel like it's okay. You can do that. You can mess with me. I know where I am in your heart.
You do. You do.
I do.
So
Right near
it's
the-
Wednesday. Phil, why don't you tell the good people about Project Melway?
Oh my gosh! Project Melway, brought to you by the Gibsonian Institute, is a It's a crazy thing that this group has asked us to do. There's a shadowy organization called the Gibsonian Institute that is either out to show the true artistic talent of Mel Gibson or to tear him down. I'm not actually sure which at this point, or maybe just to set the record straight, whatever the record may be.
Whatever the record might be.
They've
Yeah.
tasked Andy and I with watching every single Mel Gibson movie in chronological order. Today, I know, is right. We have seen our fair share of fascinatingly good and bad movies.
Yes.
Is this including uncredited?
No, it's not including. So, for instance, he's uncredited. He's got a cameo in Father's Day.
Yeah,
We're not watching that.
right.
You know,
Good
He was in a
grief.
TV show for a little bit in Australia for like 3 episodes. We're not going to watch that. You know what I
Okay.
mean? Like, come on.
interestingly, I would say at this point, we came up with a rule where he had to be one of the top 4 credited people, blah, blah, blah. But frankly, and he might be unique in this way, all of his movies, except for the couple where he has like an uncredited cameo, he's the top billed or second billed
Yeah.
in all of them. He is
Except for the
star of
very, very,
everyone.
very first movie. The very
Right,
first movie,
right.
he was like 3rd or 4th billed, but he was so clearly the best actor. Ever since then, he's been top billed in every movie
Yes.
he's been in.
So I find that interesting. So we come to this week, and this week we are seeing a little movie called Payback. But we have decided to do something special for you. And Ken, why don't you tell the good people the insane thing that we did for Project Melway this week?
Well, the insane thing that we did was we watched 2 different cuts of Payback, which one was a theatrical cut,
Mhm.
Yep.
which Mel Gibson took over from the director and screenwriter Brian Helgeland.
Helgeland?
Helgeland?
Yeah.
Helgeland?
Yeah,
Yeah, sure.
I didn't realize that Mel Gibson was the one who took it over from him.
he did. The director's cut was what Brian Helgeland wanted to release in theaters. Mel Gibson got cold feet and was like, well, this movie's going to make me too unlikable, and we need to make it a little spruce it up for the folks so they'll
It's
still
true.
like me.
It's true.
So, so they went
Wow.
ahead with that cut and released it in theaters. So we had to watch.
I had read that the studio wanted to do that. I didn't read that it was Mel Gibson specifically who wanted to
read
do that.
two
I'm
different-
not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I
know,
had not read
no.
that.
This is based off internet. So I've read two different studio and Mel Gibson. So
According to the interwebs.
And I'm gonna go out on a limb and say the studio at this point in Mel Gibson's career didn't do a lot of disagreeing with Mel
Right.
Gibson. So,
But-
but sure.
But interestingly enough, this is a good point in Mel Gibson's filmography because I think this is the beginning of the end for Mel Gibson as you guys have known him throughout this. He's kind of falling off the pedestal. And this is, I think,
Say more about that. Say more about that.
Well, this is like kind of the last, in my opinion, the last good movie where Mel Gibson was megastar wattage.
Okay.
And it's actually an entertaining movie. It opened big, I remember.
Yep.
I saw this in the theater, and I remember it having a packed audience. And
Hey, where are you from? Where are you from, by the way?
I'm from San Antonio, Texas originally. So in '99, I probably saw this in Austin. So
I was just asking because you say theater. That's all. I'm just curious.
Watch it, tough guy.
No, I'm not. Oh, listen, I'm not making fun of it. I love it. I'm just pointing it out.
How do you say it?
Theater. Just theater.
Theater.
It's just two syllables. It's which is again not actually making fun of you.
Right.
One of my best friends growing up said theater. Some of my best friends are black. No, seriously, I'm not a racist. No, I don't have a problem with it. I literally just wanted to know where you were from. I have a friend who's from Michigan. He's from the Midwest, and he said theater.
Okay.
And he was the first person I ever knew who said it.
Okay.
And I say theater, like all God-fearing Americans do, and it's not a big deal. I'm just seriously curious.
Right.
You're saying go back to what you're saying. So you think this was the last great movie of his mega wattage hero-ness?
Yes. I mean, because after this, it kind of goes on the downward spiral.
I mean, what women want, We Were Soldiers and Signs. Well, I don't know if We Were Soldiers was a huge hit, but I thought it was a great movie.
Okay,
And Signs was a huge hit, wasn't it?
But that was still when that movie wasn't marketed as a Mel Gibson movie. That was marketed as an M. Night Shyamalan movie.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny to go back to those like simple days of the late '90s, you know?
Right.
Now, do you think part of that could be? I mean, I don't know if this is a downfall thing because his crazy stuff didn't really happen in his life until like
way later. Yes, but the projects that he's doing are.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. The projects that he was doing after this aren't really on the caliber with the projects that he was doing in the '80s and early '90s.
I think this is tricky because I think really what we found in doing I think we all have this image projected on an actor, and then we have the reality, and I think the image that's projected. So, for instance, the image projected on the actor, I think, is what you just said. He hasn't made big movies like he did in the '80s and '90s. Totally true, except when we look at his movies list. Really, like, Lethal Weapon was a huge deal.
Right.
And then Lethal Weapon 2 was a huge deal. And then after that, I mean, there are big movies. He was able to carry movies. And Braveheart wasn't a big deal when it first came out.
True.
It had to get re-released and then won Oscars and then became, like, this big deal. But, I mean, he's always been sort of on the periphery in an interesting way. Like, he's never been, like, king of the world, really. And so he's never really had like this 5 or 6. There was never a 5 or 6 movie swing where everyone was like, Mel Gibson, man, can't touch him. Like, who is there but Mel? I mean, he went out and made Hamlet, and everyone like right after he does Lethal Weapon, Tequila Sunrise, and then Hamlet.
Right.
Or Lethal Weapon 2, and then something, and then Hamlet, and people were like, you know. I mean, I think he was never quite like. He never had this image of like. I mean, he had the image, but the reality was that he was making up and down flop movies and good movies. Like Air America was a flop.
That's fair.
And it was right in the midst of his, and it was right in the midst of his like, and Bird on the Wire was not a big deal, and it was right in the midst of his big like I'm Mel Gibson phase.
Right.
And I'm not saying any of that to contradict you. I'm saying maybe I am, but that's not my point. My point is more like I think we have this image of Mel Gibson as the great actor, or the great movie star. But I wonder when does that really begin and when does that really end? So you're suggesting that Payback is sort of the last hurrah for Mel Gibson as Mel Gibson, the actor, the big star.
As a big star, yes.
It's interesting. I'm not saying you're wrong. It's interesting.
I think, and we could talk about this more. I think specifically because of the what he did with the theatrical cut and the director's cut. I think we've seen that one time before, or at least one time before, with Man Without a Face, when he took the most controversial and interesting part of the source material and changed it to be safer, which is not unreasonable when you look at someone who is trying to craft a career and a star career, if that makes sense.
Yep.
But it hinders over a long enough timeline. If you do nothing but play it safe, you aren't going to be as completely successful as you might be.
Which I think is strange because I feel like Mel Gibson has always had this sort of edge to him. Like I think there's never been a more aptly named title for a movie of Mel Gibson movie than The Edge of Darkness, because I feel like that is actually, like, that to me is how he tries to play. I mean, he's never been squeaky clean.
Right.
He's never played a squeaky clean character.
Right. That's true.
And yet you are completely right that he tries to sanitize the movies that he directs.
Yes.
And this movie, the director's cut version is way sanitized.
No,
I'm sorry.
theatrical.
The studio version,
Right, yeah.
it's still violent.
Yes.
Right.
But he made it so that there's just, well, I don't know. I mean, I actually don't feel like he made the bad guy any better, other than taking out the scene where he and his wife physically fight each other.
Well,
I don't think there's a scene. I didn't feel like the director's cut, the extended cut, or wasn't extended. The director's okay.
Yeah. Well, no.
Okay.
If you guys notice the tagline for Payback, it was "Get ready to root for the bad guy."
Right.
Now, in my mind, I'm going through Mel Gibson's filmography as much as I've seen in my head right now. This is the first movie where he's played just a totally unlikable character. Not unlikable, but morally.
Not only, yeah, and I would say the studio thing with him narrating actually makes him seem like a more intentionally bad person.
That is so interesting. I honestly, I think the exact opposite. I think the theatrical version, which has there's really no way to get out of the theatrical version not rooting for him, because he's just.
That's a fair point.
Whereas the
You
director's
might be
cut,
right.
the
You might be
director's
right.
cut, and it's certainly helped by a lengthy scene of spousal abuse, but
Right.
but even throughout, it is really you sympathize with him because you can. I don't know if you saw it. We recently answered a question about in our mailbag, I think, about how there's not really a way for a movie not to have any sympathetic characters because you are drawn to one of the characters, because otherwise there's no way in for you as you watch it. So you sympathize with him to a point, but the director's cut version of Porter is flat out unlikable.
Let's see. What does he do in the director's cut? He steals from homeless people.
Yes.
He does that in the studio edition too. He does that in the studio version too.
Okay.
Although in the studio version, in the theatrical version, the homeless guy is saying something different than what he's saying in the director's cut.
Okay. Does he beat up his wife in the theatrical cut?
No.
Okay.
I still say they're fighting each other. Not that. I mean, I know to 99% of people that doesn't make it better. I'm just pointing out.
Right.
He doesn't come in and just
agree.
start hitting his wife. She attacks him, and then they physically fight each other.
Right.
And he wins. And it doesn't make him a better person, I guess, but it is different.
Right. There's just something about. I confess I didn't make a list of things that were different, but they change a lot of the stuff that's different. Is they just change the length of the cut,
Right.
or the length of the shot used, and what it does is it takes out. Interestingly, it doesn't take out the humor, but it takes out the warmth of the humor because Gibson can be really, really warm. I mean, his smile it's a movie star smile, right?
Yep.
And it doesn't take away the humor, but the humor becomes really sort of mean. Like the sarcastic, it's almost like a I don't know, like a teenager, like a kid going through puberty was in charge of the humor in the director's cut. It's really sort of angry,
Right.
which I appreciated. It's sort of it also. I feel like the director's cut is more streamlined. If you will.
Oh yeah. First of all, it's a director's cut that's actually shorter. Let's just talk about that for a second.
It's shorter.
Never in my life have I seen a director's cut that's actually shorter and less convoluted.
By how much? How by
2 or 3 minutes?
By 15 minutes.
Wow.
Is it that much shorter?
Yeah,
the director's cut's for like an hour and a
the
half.
director's cut's 98 minutes long, 90 or 98 minutes long.
Yeah.
And then the other one's like 100 and 110. I don't remember exactly, but it's
Sure.
yes.
Wow.
It's
Okay.
at least 5 to 10 minutes shorter,
Okay.
if not shorter. And I mean, there's a whole plot line that's just gone.
Yeah.
Which is a Chris Christopherson, Watson and his son being kidnapped. They totally eliminate that plot line in the director's cut. Yeah.
Yes.
And And man, being from Texas, I love Chris Christopherson.
Me too.
And I miss
Me
him in
too.
the director's cut, you know.
I'm from California, and I mean I love Chris Christopherson. So
He just makes everything better. There are a lot of people in this movie that just make everything that they're in better.
Right.
Maria
Yeah.
Bello.
Maria Bello. She
Yeah.
is so great.
Yep.
In both.
Where is she these days? Is she making
looked
is she on TNT or something?
I wondered the same thing. She's on a TV series. She does mainly TV now.
She was on the American remake of Prime Suspect, but I think that got canceled, and I don't know if she's done anything since. So let's talk about the cast. Let's talk about the cast of Payback, and the notable change is, of course, that Chris Christopherson as the
It's eliminated.
head honcho just doesn't exist
Right.
in the director's cut, and the voice, but the head honcho exists as a character. It's female, and it is played by Sally Kellerman, who most people probably know as the movie version of Hot Lips Houlihan from MASH.
Or the voice for Hidden Valley Ranch.
I'm stunned. I'm nonplussed. Phil, what do you got?
I knew Sally Kellerman originally from neither of these things. I knew her as the woman that Rodney Dangerfield falls in love with in Back to
Yes.
School.
Very good.
Are you ready
Yeah.
for how I know her, or the first
Please.
time I saw her?
Please.
I saw this before I saw MASH, which is astonishing. There is a movie.
Please say Boris and Natasha. Please say Boris and Natasha.
No, there is
Okay.
a movie in the 1980s, made in the 1980s, called Moving Violations.
With Bill's brother.
Yes,
Yes.
with like
Bill
a
Murray's
bunch
brother.
of people's
Yes.
siblings,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Casey Teach's brother, yes.
Yes, and Jennifer Tilly when Meg Tilly
Yes.
was the more famous
Right.
Tilly sister.
And
Yes.
Sally Kellerman is the judge.
The judge who is into bondage
Yes,
and discipline,
yes, right.
and
Amazing.
I can't like
No,
I
you
know
can't-
my dad watches this
see that.
podcast. Dad, what were you doing? Letting me watch that movie.
I know what my parents were doing. They were going out and leaving me at home in front of the television. That's what I know. I used to walk into the movie rental place and just rent movies. And they would rent me whatever. And then one time after I'd been there and it was called the Video Hut. Very, very original.
Yeah,
And I went to Video
sure.
Hut. And I walked in one time and I went to rent a movie that I didn't even care about. It was called Outrageous Fortune with Shelley what's her name? Shelley Long and Bette Midler.
Yeah.
I don't know why I was renting it. I really don't. I think because Bette Midler was in Ruthless People, which I had also seen it at that age.
Right.
Sure.
Like very young,
Indeed.
rated R. And they were like, you can't rent this. This is rated R. And I was like, I can rent whatever I want. And they were like, no, we don't rent movies rated R people. We don't rent rated R movies to kids. And I was like, you've rented me a lot of rated R movies. And they were like, well, we shouldn't have. And I'm like, I'm literally like 11 and I'm going or like 12 and I'm like, this is ridiculous. And I like got my mom and I was like, Mom, you need to sign something that says I can watch whatever movie I want to watch. And she was like, I'm not going to do that. What do you want to watch? And I was like, that. She's like, oh, babe, you can watch this though. And she just rented it for me. And I was like, I like looked at the lady like, see? My parents just let me watch whatever. So anyways,
Yeah.
I saw Moving Violations on HBO many times.
Indeed.
Oh yeah, that was like a childhood staple. Like if you were like 80s or early 90s, it was on HBO all the time.
All the time. All the time. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Ken, why don't you give us like a 30-second to a minute plot synopsis of Payback so people know what we're talking about.
Okay, so Payback. Mel Gibson portrays Porter, who is a criminal, a career criminal, who does a robbery with his wife and best friend. His best friend and wife end up double-crossing him by taking the money and shooting him like 3 times in the back, leaving him for dead. The sum is $70,000 that they steal from him, his cut.
Yes, his cut is $70,000. Yep.
And basically, all he wants to do is basically, he comes back, he gets healed up, and he just wants his money back. And he pretty much goes to great lengths to get that money back. In a
Fair.
nutshell.
What's funny by the no, we'll talk about that later. Okay. Anyways, that's the movie. You said it.
That's
And
the
all
movie.
he cares about is making that money back. That's the whole
Right.
movie.
Yes.
Which is interesting. We had you on because you love revenge movies.
I do.
And you mentioned that this was a revenge movie.
Yes.
it doesn't seem like a revenge movie. And it seems like Payback is a terrible title for it because it seems like it should just be called Give Me My Money Back.
Right.
That's all he wants is his money. He doesn't actually want revenge. Like if he had shown up, like he shows up and his wife who helps kill him, if she hadn't killed herself, he totally would have just stayed with her.
Well,
I think.
So Payback basically is a remake of Point Blank, which I think is more of a revenge movie than Payback. The character of Porter is in Point Blank is named Walker, who's portrayed by Lee Marvin in Point Blank. It's
Right.
the same plot, basically. Now, these characters are based on a novel called The Hunter, which was came out in 1962, and it's written by a author named Richard Stark. And Richard Stark is the pen name for Donald Westlake. Donald Westlake, you may know, is a Academy Award winning or Academy Award nominated screenwriter who was nominated for the adaptation of The Grifters.
Oh,
Wow.
And who also wrote the classic cult 80s horror movie The Stepfather.
Yes.
awesome.
Terry O'Quinn.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
Awesome.
So this guy is basically, as an author under the pen name Richard Stark, is a very pulpy, hard-boiled, trashy novelist.
And
I've never-
there was a lot. The first novel was The Hunter, but
Right.
it became a series, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's also a novel called The Outfit, I believe, which was made into a movie in the early 70s starring Robert Duvall as the Walker character.
Huh.
His name is Parker in the book.
Right.
Why they had to change his name twice in these movies, I have no
Right.
idea. But in earlier March of this year, when they had the dumping ground for all the bad movies in theaters,
Right.
released the Jason Statham J-Lo vehicle, Parker. They finally got his name right. And it's the same movie. Again, Jason Statham gets shot, left for dead, but double cross. He wants his money back. I didn't see it. I don't think anybody else did either. But yeah, so
He's like the character is like the sneaky Robin Hood. There have been like a zillion movie versions of him, and
yeah,
yet
exactly.
kind of nobody knows that's what's happening.
Right, exactly.
I do think it's funny though, because in all of them, like his whole deal is just like, I just want my money back.
Yeah,
That's the movie.
Yeah.
And they make like a joke about it because they're like, you're gonna do all this and go to war with all these people over $140,000, and he's like, no, just $70,000. I just want my share.
right.
Yeah.
Which is a funny little bit that they do in the movie.
It is. Yes.
I don't
that
want
is
a whole
awesome.
$140,000. I just want $70,000. That's all.
And in the Lee Marvin movie Point Blank, the sum is $93,000.
I was gonna say that it's like it's way more money.
Right.
93,000 in 1967
Right.
versus 70,000
Yeah.
in
1999.
1999.
Yeah, exactly.
So if I can pause this for just a second, the implication is now out there, but folks, we not only watched the theatrical version of Payback and the director's cut version of Payback, we also, for this podcast, watched the Lee Marvin movie Point Blank.
That's right. 3 movies just for one podcast.
3
The
movies.
links we go to, nation.
Yes. So moving on from that, I'm going to take a little bit of exception, Phil, with what you said. He doesn't really want revenge. He kind of wants revenge against his partner. I will give you this. He wants, shall we say, less revenge against his wife than I would want. But
here's why I think that I'm right and you're dumb.
Please tell me.
Is because if that were the case, to me, if I were making a movie about someone taking revenge against the person who killed me or tried to kill me, I would probably make my killing the person who tried to kill me the climax of the film. And it is not at all the climax of the film.
That's fair.
The climax of the film is him getting his money back. I guess the climax of the film is him getting paid back. Wait a minute. The title makes sense now.
You're onto
It's a
something.
double entendre.
No.
No?
No, that's not what that means.
That's a good point
It's
because
two things. It's exactly what it means. It means two things. That's what a double entendre is.
that's a good
It doesn't
point.
have to be about Andy. It doesn't have to be about sex.
Ken,
It's not
please
always about
interrupt
sex.
him. What were you going to say?
Like Point Blank and the director's cut of Payback are both about hour and a half long. And, pretty much everybody kind of who deserves revenge gets offed in the first like 35 or 40 minutes.
That's true.
So, yeah. So that's a good point about just him wanting his money.
So for the record, the studio edition is 101 minutes, and the director's cut is 90 minutes exactly. So it's an 11 minutes shorter, which is a lot.
There is another movie that I have seen in the past, say, year and a half, where the director's cut is shorter, but I'm not thinking of it right now. I apologize, but it's not completely unheard of, but it's basically completely unheard of. I agree with you.
So who would you rather hang out with in real life, Walker or Porter?
Porter from the theatrical cut.
Okay.
Walker's Lee Marvin?
Yes.
Right. I had to actually take notes on this just to get all these characters straight.
Indeed.
Walker,
Absolutely.
Parker, Porter. I think in the Robert Duvall movie, he has a totally different name. It's like McKelvey or something,
Wait, so what's his name in the director's cut?
It's just Porter.
It's Porter.
It's Porter in both of those, right?
Yes. It's Porter in Payback. It's Walker in Point Blank.
And it's Parker in the book.
Stop talking about that. None of us have read the book. This isn't a book podcast, okay? I gave up book reading so that I could do this podcast. I have a stack of books I'm not reading so I can watch thousands of movies that no one cares about. This is my life.
So I'm going to
talk about books in front of me.
I'm going to massacre his name again, but Brian Helgeland.
Sure.
Good enough for me. Yeah.
Okay, who wrote and directed Payback.
That wouldn't be massacring it. Massacring it would be like Brian Smith. That would be a massacre.
Okay.
Brian Helgeland, you're doing as good as you can. Go with it.
Brian Helgeland, this was his first directorial debut after coming off writing the screenplay, adapting the screenplay for LA Confidential.
Yeah.
Which he had won the Oscar for.
But he hadn't won it yet. He hadn't won it yet when he was making his movie. In fact, I was just reading, he got fired of just a few days after winning the Academy Award for LA Confidential.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Who fired him?
So apparently, the studio, Paramount and Warner Brothers freaked out and were like, we cannot have this movie looking like this. Right. And then Gibson basically backed the studio. So this is not the studio backing Gibson. This is Gibson backing the studio.
Okay.
Again, not to necessarily make that better or worse. Just a statement.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I do remember, though, enjoying the voiceover because for like a neo-noir, which is what this essentially is, it's the voiceover is good. A lot of people don't like Blade Runner, the theatrical cut, because of the voiceover, but I happen to enjoy that because it kind of fits in with the whole hard-boiled. It works.
Yeah, me too.
I miss voiceover in the director's cuts. I thought it worked.
I wish actually about both Payback and Blade Runner. I agree with you. I wish they had kept the voiceover because I really did like. I agree. The one thing that I absolutely preferred. Well, there are two things that I preferred in the theatrical cut. One was the existence of Chris Christopherson because he's amazing, and the other is the voiceover. I agree with you. I think it's a good. As you said, film noir example.
I hear you. I didn't care one way or the other about the narration. And I thought I would, but I didn't care. Like, if it was in it, fine. If it wasn't, fine. I'm still also like, to me, I didn't feel like this was film noir. Let me rephrase. I thought the theatrical edition was film noir. And I thought that the director's edition was not. I don't think he was trying to do film noir in the studio or in the extended, what do you call it? The director's cut. I'm sorry. I'm having trouble with that.
That's okay.
Because again, they're normally extended rather than short.
Right. The extended cut.
It's amazing that a director was like, I don't know, like, what made you feel like Brian Helgeland was trying to create film noir?
Well, I mean, basically, because the character of Porter is this guy. It has all of the major tropes. It has the femme fatale. Basically, there's many femme fatales in this movie.
Right, that's right.
Well, there's only one, right?
There's one, but you have the female cast portraying different aspects of the femme fatale. You have Lucy Liu.
Yeah.
Alexis Liu, she was billed as in this film, and
that's
stunning.
Very weird.
Wow, that's
very weird to me.
And this was during Ally McBeal's run too. So
this may be the way I was introduced to Lucy Liu and didn't realize it.
Okay.
Okay.
Now,
Here's the thing.
Point Blank is definitely
Maria Bello is not a femme fatale. She's a good guy.
I'm talking about Porter's wife.
Yeah.
Who becomes it would be the femme
But
fatale.
again, who's in it for 10 minutes?
That's true. Okay, but she does double cross him.
Yeah, you're right.
She is
There's
there.
no detectives. To me, like, film noirs need to have a detective. They don't need to. I'm used to them having detectives of some kind.
But you have the shady detectives played by Bill Duke and
Jack
Love me
McCarthy,
some-
whatever his name
Love
is.
me some Bill Duke.
Right?
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
He's good at just playing a scumbag. You know,
Yep,
he really
can do that
is.
very well. Yeah,
He's good at looking sweaty. Like, if you need something to look like it's set in, like, sometime where it's hot, just put that guy in. You can just see him glisten on his
It's
forehead.
true. That's
He just
true.
always looks sweaty.
definitely.
Greg Henry.
I love Greg Henry. He is so awesome.
He is
So,
wonderful.
so our idea is we're just naming people, like, part of film noir is just the seedy underbelly of a place.
Yes.
Sure,
Yes.
definitely.
Okay, to me, and I'd love your thoughts on this. I like to think of film noir as really being of a specific place and time.
Okay.
One of the reasons Lebowski works as a noir film, and they specifically were thinking they called it slacker noir, and the idea behind it was that they were trying to remake a film noir movie with the dude as the quote unquote detective, right? Is that it is such as the narrator says at the beginning. There's a narrator who's a cowboy for some reason, but who says at the beginning, like, there are people, he is of his time and place.
Yes.
And he's in the middle of, like, Venice, California, and he lives in LA in the 90s, and he just fits that, like, he is of his time and place. This movie was shot in Chicago and Los Angeles. It doesn't look like any specific city. It doesn't feel like any specific time. In fact, I just assumed it was being shot in New York. This is not a huge point for me. It's not a huge point, but I think it's interesting, right? Double Indemnity, Maltese Falcon, like, they feel like Los Angeles. You know what I mean? The
Yeah.
Grifters feels like Los Angeles.
Right.
Like they feel very much of where Reservoir Dogs feels like Los Angeles. So first of all, I'm used to them being Los Angeles,
Right.
and secondly, I mean, Devil with a blue dress, the one that Denzel Washington made in the 90s. I mean, to me, that's a Los Angeles genre. But even if it's not in Los Angeles, to me, where it is must speak to that. But I might just go out on a limb and say it's got to be in Los Angeles for it to really be a noir movie.
Did
And
you
then
guys
with
notice?
Spike
Did you
Me.
guys notice?
Spike Me.
Did you guys notice in Payback that there aren't any touch-tone telephones? It's all rotary phones.
I did notice that. Yeah.
So talk about not a specific time or place, really.
Right.
I mean, you know.
Right.
Yeah. So
I don't know that I buy that, Phil. I think that's a really interesting point, because I absolutely agree with you, and I especially like your idea that noir is almost always not only a specific time and place, but it's almost always specifically Los Angeles. I
Yeah.
find that really
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I agree with your final point that because there is no specific time and place, it can't be a noir film.
I mean, I think it's influenced by it. It's trying to be dark. They shot this thing all in blues and grays. The entire movie's in blues and grays. They wanted to shoot. Mel Gibson thought it would have been cool to shoot it in black and white. I mean, obviously, Brian Heggelund just came off of writing L.A. Confidential, which is set in Los Angeles and is a proper noir film, for instance.
The
You can tell because it's in L.A.
The director's cut doesn't end a million miles away from how Double Indemnity ends.
I agree with that. I agree with that. It's ambiguous. I would generally say noir movie endings aren't ambiguous. Like, you know who lives and who dies and what's what. I'm just throwing out here what I'm thinking about. But I wouldn't argue that this movie is. I wouldn't argue against the idea that this movie is heavily influenced by noir. I mean,
right.
To me, noir is a very specific genre. And Andy and I talked. Ken, what do you think about this? Andy and I talked a little while back. We were getting into film noir, and we were saying that Andy and I noticed. I don't remember who said what, but we basically came to the conclusion that one of the reasons not a lot of noir movies that are set in a film noir genre are made today. One of the reasons might just be that it sort of feels like a particular time, like it's of 30s and 40s in LA,
Yeah.
like a specific time and a specific era. But another big reason is that a lot of the film stuff that they were doing, the techniques and the styles, are now just prevalent in movies. Like it's actually having anti-heroes, shooting at night, being in dark places,
Right.
You know, having people that you're not sure who to root for, like narration. None of this
It's
stuff is really all that shocking.
commonplace. It's commonplace now, almost. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was you.
so-
It was you, Phil. It was a great point. It was a great point.
Definitely.
Oh, well, it must have been if I made it. There you go.
Nice.
So I want to touch on Point Blank just for a second because it does prescribe to the film noir stuff you're talking about. It's set in L.A. It takes place entirely in Southern California.
Very stylized.
Highly stylized. This movie was released in 1967, and it was one of the first movies to actually introduce new wave styles to America.
Yes.
Bonnie and Clyde was released the same year. Everybody saw Bonnie and Clyde. Nobody saw Point Blank.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Point Blank didn't become like successful as a cult movie until it played on college campuses in the 70s, and that's when people really saw it. But it's a far out movie because it's introducing American audiences to rapid jump cuts, non-linear storytelling, flashbacks, flash forwards. It's amazing in that regard.
I agree with that. I think it's interesting watching this movie. I was like, oh, now I'm finally glad that I saw the 400 Blows because the French New Wave actually did something for me. And to be perfectly honest, for those who don't know what we're talking about, which I'm going to guess is a majority.
I'm one of those people. One of those people. Go ahead.
French New Wave. It was a school of a style of directing that came to the fore in the 60s, I think, late 50s and 60s in France. Truffaut, specifically the 400 Blows, is one of the first movies. Jules and Jim, those are the first two that I saw, and Jules and Jim is a significantly more enjoyable movie than the 400 Blows. But just what you said, Ken, there are a bunch of techniques that have just, much like, Phil, what you said about film noir, a bunch of the techniques that are like, oh my God, what's going on? It's now just part of the vernacular of cinema. So you look at Point Blank now, you watch it from our perspective now, and it kind of just looks like a movie because we're used to flashbacks. We're used to zoom movements in a particular way. We're used to jump cuts, things like that. We're used to something that I thought was interesting because you're right. I mean the theatrical edition, the theatrical cut, has a fairly unambiguous ending. The director's cut has a fairly ambiguous ending, but the most nihilistic ending is, I think, Point Blank. And it's not like the most depressing because you know the director's cut, you don't know if he lives or dies.
It was definitely one of those movies where I was like, it ended, and I was like, okay.
But the fact that his reaction to finally getting what he came for, getting paid back, as it were, in Point Blank, is fascinating, and that sort of the nihilism involved in what he does there is a very French New Wave thing.
Doesn't he just leave?
He just no, I'm done.
Well, the thing is, it's such an ambiguous ending because there's many ways you can look at this movie. The most common perception about that ending is that he is shot in Alcatraz, and this is basically his fever dream. He's never escaped. Because that's the thing, it's impossible to escape Alcatraz. In the beginning of this movie, you see Lee Marvin actually escaping Alcatraz and getting to San Francisco, which is impossible. So the whole thing is just his dying.
Says you.
And 3 people may have done it, but it's a crazy way of looking at it, and I can tell why people were turned off by that movie at the time.
Right.
Interestingly enough, Steven Soderbergh on the Point Blank DVD does commentary for that movie
Because it's one of his favorite movies of all time.
and you can tell
I was extremely turned off by that movie.
Steven Soderbergh is one of the ones who actually brought that jump cut style back into the American movie houses. He's one of the ones why we have that today still.
In any movies that I liked?
Have you seen The Limey yet? I brought this up last time I was on here.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen it yet. No.
Okay,
I saw like the first 20 minutes of it when it first came out because I was told I had to see it, and I was like, whatever.
Okay. Okay.
Listen, I'm not trying to be flip about this. I don't know
I
what my
know.
problem is. I don't like when I don't like stuff that people like that people are supposed to like. If I feel like when I don't like something that film fans are supposed to like, I'm like, oh, I'm deficient.
Sure.
No. Yeah.
But I really, and by the way, I have to tell you guys this. So the other night I'm like, honey, we're gonna watch a movie. She's like, okay. I'm like, it's called Point Blank. She's like, I am not watching that movie with John Cusack. I was like, no, it's not Gross Point Blank. She's like, okay, well, I don't like that movie. And I was like, that's fine. She's like, well, what's this one? I'm like, it's from 1967. She was like, oh. I'm like, no, it'll be all right. Literally the first 3 minutes, she goes, nope. No. And I was like, I'll go in the other room then. She's like, yeah, I'm not watching this.
You know,
She literally just said no. Like, she didn't say, I don't want to watch it. She goes, no.
I had not seen that movie in a while, and I totally forgot that you get a nude Angie Dickinson in that movie.
You do.
Yes.
Which for 1967 was kind of crazy to have like any nude scenes in an American movie. You know, I was shocked they had that in there.
Right. Also, not to stereotype an entire country, also fairly French.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, like and
I have
specifically French
no
cinema.
problem stereotyping another country, and you are absolutely right. Also, Andy, say what you said to me about Angie Dickinson.
She is, you know, sort of the low-hanging fruit, obvious answer for sexiest woman in movie history is Marilyn Monroe.
Yep.
If there is another person who can enter that conversation, and we're not talking most beautiful, although she is beautiful.
Mhm.
We're not talking any other sort of marker or way of categorizing physical attractiveness except purely sexy, and there's no other way to say it. It's got to be Angie Dickinson. She is ridiculous. In Rio Bravo,
Yeah.
Rio Bravo, she is just, yes.
it's
Yes.
she's just
Yes.
in the way that Marilyn Monroe is, and I don't mean this in like a derogatory way. She
Right.
is walking sex. She's
Mhm.
just like it is.
There's something just profoundly sexual about her. I would say the only thing that comes close is Elizabeth Taylor in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I would agree with that. And it's not like Elizabeth Taylor didn't have other roles where she played that up, played her sex appeal up. But Angie Dickinson, it was like her thing, you know.
Right.
And Elizabeth Taylor, it wasn't always her thing.
That's true.
But that's not to disagree with you.
Right.
Do you know who else is in Point Blank that I didn't notice this until last night? Was Sid Haig.
Doogie Howser's dad?
Yes, Doogie Howser.
Doogie Howser's dad.
Exactly.
Yes.
But did you guys recognize Sid Haig?
Which
Who
one's
was
Sid
he?
Haig? Wait,
So-
who's Sid Haig in real life? Who's Sid Haig that I care?
Sid Haig is in The Devil's Rejects.
He's the clown makeup guy.
Captain's. Yeah.
No!
Yes.
He's in that?
He is one of the penthouse lobby guards. He doesn't have a beard, but he has a hat. And I was like, is that Sid
Wow.
Haig? Sure was, yeah. So-
Okay,
Good look,
very
man.
briefly,
Good
because
luck.
we're talking about that, just because that reminded me. One of the funniest, and because we just got finished talking about the jump cuts, one of the funniest cuts I've ever seen is in Point Blank, and it's where Lee Marvin is sneaking into the penthouse.
Yes.
He's in the shadows on the balcony, and he's looking at the two guards, and it cuts to Angie Dickinson and John Vernon in bed, and it cuts back to the balcony, and the two guys are tied up. It's just like, you don't see any of it, and he's like putting the finishing touches on tying up the second guy. I was like, well done, Lee Marvin. Well done.
Marvin is badass.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So how close are Lee Marvin and Mel Gibson as far as like movie star status and personality, would you say, as far as their on-screen personalities go?
I think Mel Gibson is far more broadly appealing.
Accessible to audiences.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Lee
Right.
Marvin.
I think Lee Marvin's I think Lee Marvin his attractiveness is based on his inaccessibility. Like there's something that's very standoffish and what's that word that's aloof. There's something very aloof and self-possessed about his brand of. I mean, it's cool in like not even cool like that guy's cool, but cool like there's something like not cold, but very close to cold and distant and aloof about him.
Yeah.
And
That's really well said.
and Gibson is charming. I mean, he's charming. He's able to be crazy. He's able to be. He's a lot more he's a lot more emotionally intense.
Sure.
Is Gibson charming in Payback though?
In the theatrical cut, I think he is.
In the theatrical cut, I think Andy's right. I think in the theatrical cut, he is. I spent the
Interestingly-
first 10 minutes being like, how am I supposed to believe that this guy's the bad guy?
I'm about to use my legal education for you. I'm gonna whip out some legal knowledge on you guys. Although,
Please.
Phil, I think you know this already, and Ken, you might as well. Lee Marvin, and this is to go to their sort of off-screen persona.
The first palimony suit.
Very good.
Yes, yes.
Lee Marvin is
Marvin
the
Mitchelson was
Yes.
the one who represented his wife. Do you know who the second client that Marvin Mitchelson had after Lee Marvin's wife?
No.
Poor Andy tried to come up with this
No, it's all
awesome
good.
tidbit, which,
That's all
okay.
good.
I was
Well,
like, oh,
we haven't
Andy.
actually said what it is, so or explained it.
It
so.
was Bob Dylan's wife.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wait, was what?
The
The
second,
palimony-
the gentleman who represented Lee Marvin's ex-girlfriend.
Was Bob Dylan's second wife? Or Bob Dylan's wife's second husband?
No, was Bob Dylan. It was his second client.
Oh.
As far as the palimony goes.
Yes.
Why would he do palimony with a woman who was married to Bob Dylan?
It might not have been palimony. It might have been alimony.
Well,
So,
sure.
for those who don't
Obvious.
know, palimony is basically spousal support when there was not actually a marriage.
That's
Right.
what it, okay, gotcha. Yes.
Bob Dylan was absolutely married to Sarah Lowndes. I mean, I know they were married, and then they had 3 or 4 kids. So
Sure.
And then they got a divorce.
But there is, and I'm not going to say this is a family podcast, but in the opinion, in the opinion on the case with Lee Marvin and his ex-girlfriend, and you can read just all sorts of news articles about it. Lee Marvin, he is basically like a more macho Hugh Hefner. It is unbelievable the life this guy lived. And so, while I love him as an actor, I am not surprised that he had a relationship that ended badly. I'll just leave it there.
But do you think palimony is legit, Andy?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm just asking.
I want to talk about a couple things with Point Blank. First off, John Vernon.
I know. No, introducing John Vernon.
Was it?
Yeah.
Was it really?
Yeah.
So, for those who don't know who that is, I trust that everyone who is right thinking in this world has seen the movie Animal House. The partner that double crosses Lee Marvin in Point Blank is played by Dean Wormer.
Yep.
And he has a nude scene.
He does. He has a nude scene. It's
Not
unbelievable.
making me comfortable at all.
Indeed.
I think I was introduced to him from I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker, if I remember
I was
correctly.
introduced to him through Dirty Harry because he's the mayor in the first Dirty Harry movie.
That's right.
Oh,
Well
you're
done.
right. I just hadn't seen that movie yet. And he was in Outlaw Josie Wales.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Yes, he's great. He is great, and he's a guy that isn't really remembered. And,
By the way,
and he should be.
still alive.
Is he still alive? Okay, I was
Yeah.
going to ask. Okay.
72 years old. An example of a guy who should still be doing things. Wow, he's looked old forever.
That's
Yeah.
true. That's true. I feel like he was at what he looked like in Point Blank and Animal House at the age of 14, and he just hasn't aged a day since then.
This may or may not surprise you, but he's done a lot of voice work.
Oh, okay.
Doesn't surprise me a bit. He's got an awesome voice.
Yeah.
I love
I
his
wish
voice.
that they would make a movie with all of the best surviving character actors of the past 30 years, and that's it. You know,
Sure.
get
Yes.
Emmett Walsh, Brian Dennehy, John Vernon, and they're they're the main stars of the movie. That would be
They should call it The Expendables, but somebody already took that title for a movie that wasn't going to be any good because those
Right.
guys really are treated expendably.
That's true.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, exactly.
Something else I want to talk about with Point Blank, the wife character, the one who double crosses Lee Marvin.
She's a horrible, horrible actress.
She is terrible. She is terrible.
I couldn't
I
tell
didn't
if
notice
she
'cause
was a
she
horrible
died
actress
so quickly.
or if that was just how the line readings were supposed to come.
I sort of felt like that's how the movie was stylized. I was
Are you
like,
ready for this?
Is she terrible
There's
or
a
is the movie
story
bad?
about it because she has that weird monologue where
Yeah.
he's just sitting on the couch listening to her, and she's just talking to herself as if she's on something, right?
Right.
I'm glad he was
So-
listening to her because I wasn't.
So, and this is just from Wikipedia. It was supposed to be a conversation, but one of the takes, Marvin just sat there and let her talk and improvise, and obviously she wasn't very good at it. So what they did presumably in the next take was the director was like, all right, all of his lines are now your lines, and you just have to pretend to be talking to yourself.
Oh,
John
wow.
Borman was like, just do it.
Yeah.
And frankly, that monologue is similar to a French New Wave sort of style of monologue. And interestingly, I thought this was almost a direct callback. Have you seen the movie Jules and Jim, Ken?
I haven't seen the whole thing, and it's probably been a decade or so.
Sure.
If I ever saw it.
There's a lot of for Phil and for most of you out there who have not seen this movie. It's basically a love triangle
between three people.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
And what's it cover in point blank, pretty much.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And the shot of Lee Marvin and John Vernon in the front seat of the car, and Sharon Acker, who plays his wife, in between the two, and she's looking at both of them, is like a direct shot lift from Jules and Jim. One of the most famous shots in that movie.
Wow.
So I thought that was really interesting. Like Boorman he's not hiding the ball with what he wants to do with like bringing the new wave techniques to an American movie.
Wow, that's really interesting. So John Boorman, so he's really good at directing this highly stylized movie. For those of you out there who really don't know John Boorman, you would know him from his most famous movies are, I guess, Deliverance.
Yep.
Hope and Glory, maybe. Excalibur.
I love that
I remember
movie.
Excalibur.
I love that movie.
Really
that movie
awesome.
Rules.
He's more infamous for making two of the most befuddling flops in the history of movies. One is the Exorcist sequel, which is Exorcist II: The Heretic.
Oh,
which is
Not Exorcist II, not Exorcist II, Electric Boogaloo. That's not.
It should have been called that. It is one of the worst, best movies you'll ever see.
Okay.
Or best movies.
Best worst. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
it.
crazy. He's also did Zardoz. Have you guys seen this?
I've only seen
That's
the
not a
screenshots
thing.
of Sean Connery in like the
in the
weird
diaper
getup.
and the knee-high boots.
Yes.
Right. Oh, it's crazy. You
Never
have
heard of this. Never heard of this.
It's a science fiction, right?
Yeah.
Weirdo
Science fiction stoner movie from the early 70s with Sean Connery fighting against a huge head, a godhead, literally, that flies through the air. And Sean Connery has a ponytail, handlebar mustache, knee-high boots, and wearing a red diaper.
Oh, I've seen pictures of that.
Yeah. Yes.
See,
Indeed.
John Boorman. And by the way, we'll have to post pictures of that on this podcast, like underneath it. See, directors like that are what people call visionaries, and they bore me. Like, I just don't. Like, just make a movie that I want to watch.
Sure.
So,
Let's.
what else do we need to talk about here?
Well, let's maybe close the book on Point Blank and move back to Payback to wrap up. But
Because I want to talk about the MG.
sure. The last thing I'll say about Point Blank, Lee Marvin and Angie Dickinson are so good, and we've said that already, basically. But the way in which they're good, their relationship is completely believable throughout, and it is told almost without dialogue.
Yeah.
They obviously have a lot of dialogue between the two of them, but the growth of their relationship is almost totally done with looks between the two of them, and it is amazing because they're fabulously talented.
Yeah.
That's it. I'm done with Point Blank.
No, I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
I am actually very glad you said that.
Yeah.
Good way to close.
Yeah. So, Payback, MG.
I mean, I thought this to me felt. I don't know. I thought it was a very special Mel Gibson performance, especially the theatrical or the director's cut.
Yeah.
I thought it was a very special performance.
No, he's quite good in it. I mean, he really makes that movie his own. And I remember the theatrical cut, and I remember in the director's cut, it's a really goofy. There's some goofy scenes in it, like the scenes with Lucy Liu and the Asian mafia.
Right.
It's very ridiculous.
It's like a totally different movie. It's
Yes.
like, okay.
Yeah. I think one thing I want to acknowledge is that the director's cut is a better movie.
Yeah.
But I still don't care for it.
Okay.
Like I mean, it was well made, but
Right.
I think it goes back to like it's nihilistic, like or it's maybe it's just amoral. It might not be nihilistic, it might just be amoral.
Yeah.
But it's literally like who cares about anybody? I mean, it's just I think the thing is you like revenge movies, Kenny, and we talked about this before. We talked about different reasons to like it or not like it. I think one of the reasons that I'm such a fan of, and we've talked about this a lot, Tarantino, but I'm such a fan specifically of Kill Bill, and but also of Django Unchained and Inglourious Bastards. But I'm such a fan of Kill Bill because to me, the revenge aspect, like every death means something.
Right.
Yeah.
Even when she kills 88 people in one scene,
Yeah.
it means something to
Yes.
her.
Yes.
I mean, the final scene of that movie says everything to me, but it shows that this is all about, like, it's a one large catharsis played out over 4 hours in Kill Bill. But I mean, the revenge in these movies is like, it's like potent. And in this movie, maybe it's because it's not a revenge movie. I don't know, but like everybody it's just a bunch of bad people doing bad things, and we choose to root for one of them because he's the best looking. Maybe, I don't know.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah, by no means is this a great movie. It is okay though. It's one of those movies where you can sit down and do other stuff too, and you're perfectly fine with it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I agree with that. It's perfectly comfortable being a background movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I can't imagine. Which, by the way, we say that and we're like, I mean, it's fun to have on in the background. Can you imagine like the people who spent millions of dollars and hours and weeks and months on this movie, just sweating blood and tears? Can you imagine the tears that Brian Helgeland cried, literal
Right.
tears, when he was fired from his first directing feature? Can you imagine the sort of the oceans of booze that Mel Gibson drank before, during, and after making this decision?
Right.
And you don't even say that lightly. Like, he's an alcoholic. He probably drank a lot just to get through this because he was like it freaked him out. I bet. I mean, it can't feel good to do what he did. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, can you imagine the amount of energy, time, money, all that was put into this, and then the three of us are like, yeah, you put it on the background, you'll be fine.
It's true.
It's just like, that's worse than I hated it.
But I do believe that this movie was a hit. It made money on its release.
Yeah.
So
It was a big hit. Yeah, I
Yeah.
actually have the numbers up here.
Oh yeah.
I do. Payback made, it's his 10th highest grossing. It's the 10th highest grossing Mel Gibson movie. It made $81 million.
Huh.
it's the 10th highest, really.
Yes.
Fascinating. I'm actually fascinated by that. I wouldn't think it would be that high.
What's the number one highest grossing Mel Gibson movie?
I'm gonna guess really quick. Lethal Weapon 2.
I'm gonna
Doesn't
guess. I'm gonna guess What Women Want.
You were very close. That's number 2.
Oh, okay.
And Lethal Weapon 2 is the 3rd highest grossing, and Lethal Weapon 3 is the 4th highest grossing.
Okay.
So it can't be a Mad Max movie.
No.
Okay.
So, I give up.
Is it The Patriot?
And that's the 7th highest.
Okay. What is it?
Signs. $227.9 million.
Wow.
Wow, everybody hates that movie too.
I didn't hate it. I didn't hate it when I saw it, and I don't hate it now.
I actually like it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, to be fair, I haven't watched it since I saw it in the theaters.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right.
But that one shot of the alien in the cornfield, I was
Yeah.
out,
Yeah.
terrified.
Yes.
And and I'm not gonna lie to you. Seeing Mel Gibson play a priest with a family made me really happy. I the whole like him struggling with his faith thing was very, I mean, it's like dangling it in front of me. This one's for you, Phil.
Well,
Sure.
and Brian Helgeland came back. Okay, he just directed 42.
He
That's
did.
right. Yes.
Yeah.
So I haven't seen it yet, but I hear good
I
things.
believe he over-directed 42, but that's fine.
Yeah, I would agree. I would
But the
agree
movie
with that.
like that.
Both overwrote and over-directed it.
Yeah.
I think.
But there was some good stuff in that movie.
Yeah, I think, and and obviously, it's always sort of a guessing game. Who fashions a performance more, the actor who's doing it or the director who is shaping it. But I think we talked about 42 briefly a few days ago, and we mentioned that Alan Tudyk has a truly brave performance as just an unbelievably racist manager in 42. And I think what the reason that I prefer the director's cut, when you scrape away everything else, because Maria Bello is wonderful in both, but she's roughly equally wonderful in both. Greg Henry is equally wonderful in both. I miss Chris Christopherson, but Mel Gibson's performance is so, and the word I would use is brave. It is actually brave, which makes me particularly sad
That they didn't just air it the way it was?
Yes. It makes me particularly sad that, like,
Yeah.
he was like, I've done this brave thing, and I'm
Yeah.
going to dial it back.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know?
Ken, get back in the middle of the screen. You got to stick with us. If you go back to the side, we won't see you.
It took forever for that director's cut to hit too.
Yeah, it came out in 2006 or 2007.
Yeah.
Apparently came out the same year that they did a director's cut of Superman 2, which I now have to find.
I have that. It's not that great.
Shh.
That's upsetting to me.
Okay.
I've heard
I've
that.
seen it.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah,
I've heard Richard Donner he got control taken away from him on that one.
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
got control taken away from him, I believe, on Scrooged as well, from what I've heard.
Huh.
Well, like
I heard that
Superman
Bill
2
Murray basically was like, no, we're just going to end it differently than you want because this is not going to work out. That's what I heard.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I believe it. I totally believe it too. Superman 2 is weird because like the director's cut, it's a lot of it is like audition footage that they squeezed in order to realize Richard Donner's vision because a lot of it wasn't filmed, so they just used like test footage.
That
and
is so weird.
it's really weird. It's just, but it works.
That's not okay.
Yeah. Well, that's all they have. So you got to get what you know.
I feel like if that's all they have, then stop. Just
Right.
just
yeah,
let it go.
indeed.
Right.
Just let it go. You made the movie you made. It wasn't what you wanted. Make another movie. Everything will be fine.
Indeed.
Right.
Preferably with Maria Bello in it.
Yes, everything should have Maria Bello in it. Everything should have David Paymer in it. I don't know.
David
We
Paymer-
haven't even talked about David Paymer.
He's great.
That's 2 David Paymer movies I watched this week and 3 in the month. I love David Paymer.
He's wonderful.
What were the only 2 David Paymer movies you watched?
I watched this and I watched City Slickers.
Nice.
Oh,
And then I watched about a month ago, I watched Searching for Bobby Fischer, and I love him in that movie.
okay.
Nice.
He plays the father of like the kid Josh's like best friend, the other kid who plays chess, and his dad is like a total nerd. Shockingly, David Paymer plays a nervous Nelly.
That's
I
really
loved
weird.
this. I loved him in this movie. Are you gonna kill me?
Right.
Are you gonna like he asked it and he asks it with the F word, so which I will not say in this, but he's like, oh, are you gonna kill me now? Like it's this sort of like not even like I mean there's sadness, but there's this like sort of like that guy knows at some point he's gonna die unnaturally.
And he's like, of course, this is
Is
how
it
I
today?
do it.
Right.
Yeah, really?
And I like how David Paymer's wearing like the plaid 70s gross sport jacket throughout
It
this whole
literally
thing.
was like Brian Helgeland was like, make him look like a loser from a 70s movie.
Exactly.
Indeed. Yes.
Yeah.
Like he just looks like a prototypical schmuck.
Yes.
Right.
That's very
I
well said.
love David Paymer.
Me too.
David Paymer needs to be in more movies. He is
Agreed.
one of my favorite that guys of all time.
Yeah. We
So,
have anything else? Are we?
I think that's all I have to say about Payback. And I feel kind of bad for you guys because you're not going to. I feel on the next round of Mel Gibson movies,
You're already wrong.
You're not going to hit those heights again, except with Signs, maybe.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Rather than just saying you're wrong, don't be dumb. What do you consider heights? When you say heights, you mean artistic heights?
No,
What do you mean? Because I don't consider this like an artistic height. Like, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, just kind of really good, entertaining movies. Now, that being said, I have never seen Once We Were Soldiers. Is that what it's called?
Okay, We Were Soldiers is not entertaining. It's harrowing, but it is a very good movie.
I've never
I
seen
have
it,
not seen
actually.
that. I've
Oh
never
my gosh, Andy! I watched it watched it a couple years ago for the first time ever, like when I was in Virginia, and I got to tell you, it is. I'm kind of like excited to see it again, but it's not a happy movie by any means. It's
Okay.
just a
You know what?
hardcore
I
Vietnam
take
movie.
that back. I loved Edge of Darkness. I thought Edge of Darkness.
I liked Edge of Darkness quite a lot. Let me tell you what I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to Chicken Run.
Yep.
I'm looking forward to parts of The Patriot.
Yep.
I've seen What Women Want once, and it's quite enjoyable.
Okay.
I will watch that again. I will watch it again. We know this. I'm looking forward to We Were Soldiers. I'm looking forward to Signs again, kind of, just to kind of see what happens. I've never seen Singing Detective. I've never seen $1 Million Hotel. I'm looking forward to Edge of Darkness again. I've never seen The Beaver. I don't know. To me, I feel like we're now in a very exciting time in Mel Gibson's career.
The Beaver it's a recent movie. It was not very well promoted or seen because it was right when it was right in the middle of his like total meltdown. He is wonderful in it. It is one of his best performances. Very, very briefly, if I can interject, folks, the next 3 weeks, the next 3 movies we're watching: $1 Million Hotel, Chicken Run, and The Patriot. So that's what's coming up in Project Melway.
That's a really
Love
broad
it.
spectrum of movies. That's crazy.
It really is. It really is.
But that's the thing is, his movies are not like pigeonholable. That's not I mean, there are ways. Andy and I have found ways to pigeonhole them anyway. But he does have a specific like running themes, I think, and I think darkness is one of them. Grittiness but like a very Hollywood friendly version of grittiness.
Yeah.
He will never let the grittiness get in the way of the Hollywood. Well, maybe he will now. I think ever since his like total breakdown. I mean, Edge of Darkness, Get the Gringo, Beaver, and now Machete. Now it's the Machete movie.
Yeah, the Beaver and Get the Gringo are Get the Gringo. He's kind of like he is in the director's cut of Payback.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm also excited about Machete sequel. Not actually because the first one was fine. It is what it is. I don't love it like other people do.
Right.
But I'm interested to see him in an ensemble.
And to see him actually playing the villain. He will be the villain.
Yes.
Nice.
Interesting note about that is I found out a couple of weeks ago that I live a mile away from Troublemaker Studios. Because
Awesome.
How have you not realized that?
And literally ran into the gate because they have it's part of the old airport in Austin, and Robert Rodriguez bought a bunch of that and gated it off, and now it's Troublemaker Studios. So
You
really
should have
cool.
figured that out a long time ago. Now, Ken, here's my question.
okay,
Why would we ever have you back on the show?
I don't know unless you do like a really big Burt Reynolds marathon, but I doubt you'd want to do that for yourselves.
You are
You know
correct.
what?
I wouldn't.
You know what, Phil? I actually commented recently. You were talking about Paul Newman. If you ever did a Paul Newman kind of retrospective, that would be really interesting. Because
Is there? Well, no. Let's think in particular movies. I mean, are there specific things that we'd have you back on for? Like we've had you on today because you told us to watch these movies because you're a big fan of the revenge genre,
right?
and this fits apparently into that mold. Though I have debunked that flawlessly on this episode of Second Breakfast.
Oh, you are just so infuriating. It is
so-
unbelievable.
But do you think? But only by stating facts. That's the only way I did it.
Your face
Ken,
is so punchable. It's unbelievable. Boom.
Didn't feel a thing. So Ken, I guess what I'm saying is we like to have reasons. I mean, we'll have you back on. We love having you on.
Yes,
You're a great
we
guest,
love
but
having
we
you
need
back
to
on.
have. But I need to know. I mean, anybody with a Bob Dylan LP behind him framed, and then a Prince poster behind them, which you can't see everybody because his head's in the way. You're all right. There it is. Look at that. Purple Rain and Nashville Skyline. God bless America. Both of them born in Minnesota, by the way. Both Minnesota natives.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
So, I just need to know, why would we need to know why we'd have you back on?
Well, look, I own about 1,600 movies in my collection, so I could pretty much talk about them if the subject matter is right. So just hit me up anytime.
What do you do for a living?
I work for the state, but
I don't like you.
My wife thinks that I'm a DVD hoarder. She may be right, but
She sounds like she's right.
She's not 100% wrong.
Right, I'll tell you what she's not. Wrong.
Right.
Do you have VHS as well?
I don't. I did maybe 3 years ago, and I just donated all my tapes to Goodwill. So.
Do you have laser discs?
I do not. Never got into the laser disc.
That was not a format war you participated in?
No, I had a friend though back in the day who had a massive laserdisc collection. So, yeah.
My brother bought me. I have like 40 laserdiscs now because my brother got them for me for Christmas, like just a stack of them.
Nice.
Yeah.
Really?
Wait. Nice.
Well, here's the thing. This is okay. Here's the okay. Then we're gonna go, but I have to tell you this. The problem is that that laser discs were the height of how a movie could look and sound when TVs were still analog.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now that TVs are digital, you have to do all sorts of crazy hookups and change your levels and do all sorts of stuff to make the DVD look good. So I got this Laserdisc. So I got this Laserdisc player. I wanted the Laserdisc player because my dad had a bunch of Laserdiscs. When he died, I kept them. And one of the reasons I kept them was because he used to buy symphonies, like classical music concerts, on Laserdiscs that were obviously at the time the best available thing, but
Sure.
they haven't put them out on DVD or Blu-ray. Like in Laserdisc for some reason attracted the classical music crew in a way that DVD and Blu-ray has not. Huh. And so all these things that I used to watch with my dad, like my classical education, so to speak, the only way for me to watch it is through Laserdisc. So I got this Laserdisc player and then I put them on and it looks like garbage.
Really?
So I'm gonna have to find the way to. There's ways to do it. I have to buy all these wires and make it work, and I'm kind
How
of
does
like
it sound? Because again, with like the classical music,
analog sound. I mean, it's analog
Yeah.
sound. I have to switch to. I know it could be digital sound. I have to get a digital hookup for it.
Sure.
The sound could be all right.
Fascinating.
Guys,
So-
really quick,
Yeah.
I'm going to close this out and then take off. But so I mentioned Seeing Detective. When you watch the movie, there's a great BBC miniseries that you have to watch. Also, Edge of Darkness.
It's
you
also
don't
BB. Yeah.
Yeah,
Edge of Darkness is also a great BBC miniseries.
nice.
So Gibson definitely has good taste in material. So
I would agree with that statement. I would agree with that statement.
Yeah.
Well,
thanks again for having me on.
thank you for coming on, man. It's
Yeah, man.
it's always a blast.
I'll see you at
Seriously.
Christmas.
Two
You
for
will
two,
see-
Ken.
You will see me at Christmas
We're hanging out at Christmas.
if
Phil,
you want to
you're
come to
welcome.
Amarillo, Texas.
Baby. Come on.
Yeah. Christmas, kind of a busy time of year in the church.
Bring your entire congregation.
All right. Including my wife, who will have had a child like about a minute before Christmas.
Hey, congratulations. That's
I
awesome.
guess. Thanks. No, I'm kidding. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. I'm just joking because literally there's the busiest times, right? Christmas and Easter.
No
And
kidding.
my wife basically got pregnant at Easter, which made her, now we're going to have a kid at Christmas. It's like,
Yeah.
sure, let's
Great.
do that.
Well,
Whatever. It's going to be amazing. And it's only going to, it'll be fine. It's going to be fantastic. So thank you for that.
This is
Appreciate
called burying the lead. We've been talking for almost an hour and 15 minutes, and we're just now finding out that Phil and his wife are pregnant again. So
it. Yeah.
burying the lead.
God, have we been talking for that long? Let's wrap this up.
Indeed. Folks, this has been another installment of Second Breakfast Project Melway for Andy Roth, Phil Duvall, and our very special guest, Ken Quinney. We're Second Breakfast. We'll see you again real soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
The most important meal of the day, second breakfast.